What's up, everybody? How you doing? It's your boy Mel here for another classic review, and also a happy Halloween, everybody. Unfortunately, I was planning to do my thoughts on the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, most specifically the '90s, but due to me working, one, I'm a scare actor, and I'll be busy like all night. I'll be coming home tired. One, because I arrive home like 2 or 3 in the morning, so yeah. But don't worry, I plan to upload the video in November. Hey, I'm not the only one. Fox is uploading their latest one in November as well. So, when's the last time you saw a classic horror film? Most specifically, Universal horror. Ah, yes. You can't miss the good stuff like in the old days. You got Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, the Bride, the Creature in the Black Lagoon. But during those times, Universal keeps milking those same characters like over and over and over. Like, how many Frankenstein been there? You got the original one with Boris Karloff, then he keeps milking it. Then you have Lon Chaney playing the monster. And also one time Bela Lugosi as well. It keeps expanding. Same thing with the Wolfman, Dracula, the Invisible Man, even the Mummy. But there's one horror character in Universal's library that has never been milked a lot. It only has 3 films, and it's more iconic since it has its own Broadway. Well, used to. Who remembers the Phantom of the Opera? Ah, yes. Those who might know, if you're guessing the Andrew Lloyd Webber performance, yeah. I'm not talking about that one. Most specifically, I'm talking about the original 3 from Universal. The one from 1925, the one from 1943, and the one did alongside with Hammer Film 1962. And those are more like the iconic 3 versions of the Phantom of the Opera. When it comes to dark, mysterious. Hey, that's how the Phantom of the Opera is. If you ever read the book, yeah, it's more darker and way more enjoyable than the Broadway. Besides, if Blumhouse plans to do this version of the Phantom of the Opera, they're more big like in the book. No Broadway, more dark and back to its roots and iconic horror. Besides, the Phantom of the Opera has been like one of the most iconic ones of all, and the only one that hasn't been like milked a lot. Well, there's been a couple of times, like mostly for television films. There's been only a few cinematic films, like you have the one with Robert Englund in the 90s, no, in the 80s. And I think the last theatrical Phantom of the Opera was the one based on the Broadway from in 2004. You have Gerald Butler playing the iconic mask maestro. But I'm talking about the original 3 from that is more dark and stick to the book. Well, almost. But yeah, before we begin, did you subscribe? Did you hit the bell? If so, well then, let's travel down the dark catacombs of the famous Paris Opera House, and let's see what secrets can be unveiled in the dark with a simple flick of a candle's light. So yeah. When I talk about family opera, you got like the iconic ones from Universal. Mostly, you have the actors who portrayed the famous mask maestro. You have the 1925 starring Lon Chaney. You have the 1943 with Claude Rains, and the 1962 with Herbert Lom from Hammer. And the most iconic one of all has to be the 1925 with Lon Chaney as the famous Phantom. And this is like the most iconic. If you look at Rotten Tomatoes, it has 90%. A film that's almost 100 years old and still well beloved. And it's also in public domain. Literally, you can look up on YouTube. There's a full version of it. And, well, depends which, because remember, this is a silent film. And it has different music compositions over the years, so yeah. But this unlike you have the 1943 and the 1962, 1925 has a large history about the production, even swapping many directors for this film. Example, this film has like 5 directors Yes, 5 directors. The first one being Rupert Julian, who directed most of the film, but fortunately, he usually crosses paths with the Phantom himself, Lon Chaney Sr., and including leading man who plays Norman Carey, who plays Raoul. Literally, those two hated Rupert Julian. Even the wife of the director had to smack him in the back of the head to stop acting like a total jackass, because it's going to cost the movie a lot. Then you have another one called Ernest Lemel, then Edward Segwick, and then a woman who managed to finish it called Lois Weber, who managed to complete the film. Although if you've seen the documentary that Universal did for the Phantom of the Opera, like they do with every classic horror film when you buy the movie, she's listed as, let's see, Lois Weber as editor, but in reality she's also both editor and director. And man, this film was good. I'm kind of glad this film was not lost. If it was, we wouldn't have this iconic film ever. The 1925 has to be like the most iconic, just for one thing: Lon Chaney's performance as the Phantom. In his contract, during filming, no photographs of his unmasked face should be released to the public until the film was released. And when the film was released back in 1925, Jesus Christ, people screamed in terror when the iconic scene where Eric, aka the Phantom, playing his organ, while Christine, curiosity kills the cat, curiously wants to know who's the man behind that mask, and she slowly, as he's playing the organ, until when she rips the mask, we see this grotesque face, and people scream. Kids run out on the aisle. Damn. In that performance. Wow. You see the iconic lines where the Phantom says, "Look at me. You want to see what I look like? Feast your eyes. Glut your soul in my cursed ugliness." And that's the exact same line in the book. Literally in the novel. And Lon Chaney took that makeup from the description from the novel: a face of a dead man, eyes sunken in like of a grinning skull, skin yellow tight, with no nose, like a living corpse. And that's what makes so iconic this film. But the ending for the demise of the Phantom, that's a tricky one, because there were many versions, many takes. The first one was the original one, like in the book where Christine kisses, Eric, and Eric dies of a broken heart. Unfortunately, that version of the ending is lost. So we have another one more like a frontier justice, like kind of like a Western frontier justice, where the Phantom takes Christine to a carriage, and a whole angry mob chases him and beats him up and tosses him into the river where he drowns. That's the ending we have. And there have been many versions of this, because there's some of the film that are missing lengths. Like, there's one version like an hour with 15 minutes, and another version is an hour and 31 minutes, because there's some scenes missing in the film. Depends which one you're watching. And compositions as well, which makes it very iconic. Including, not just that, including the stage 28. Unfortunately, back in, I think it was 2015, Universal tore down the stage, which, that was the most stupidest decision. That was a historic landmark. And people are like, it was just a stage. If you haven't seen, that stage has been around since 1925 and has been reused even for the 1943 film of Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, that stage still had the original opera house set in pristine condition. You imagine that? 100 years ago, later, and it's set still intact, and they tore it down. I don't know what happened to the set. I hope it's in a warehouse protected. If they destroy that set that's been handcrafted, they're fucking stupid. And people said, well, there's their money. Well, they're lost. Literally, if they're planning to do like another horror Phantom of the Opera film in the future, if Blumhouse planning to do it, they just lost an iconic stage. They got stage where they can actually use the original set from 100 years ago, but they lost their chance. Oh boy. As for many films, there's been a lot. Originally, there's been a lot of problems with the 1925. Like, mostly it was the director, because okay, you have like 5 directors for this one film. I was like, why? Rupert Julie, for example, being like a total, diva, total up ass. Yeah, exactly. And he left during the time. Even the founder, Carl Laemmle Sr., let's just say he's not a fan of horror films, but his son, Carl Laemmle Jr., loves horror films, and plus he knew the author of the novel, Gaston Leroux, and asked his permission to do the movie, which he agreed. Originally, they wanted to do it in Paris, but due to cost of traveling, they do it right here, and they hired talented people, including an architect. I forgot the name of him, which he did designs of the, like the underground, the opera house, which he knows what it looks like because he actually been to the actual opera house in Paris. If you remember the documentary, it actually shows that, which is actually pretty cool about the production of the film. Originally, there have been a lot of, because the budget, because the ending changes, the script, everything. But literal, the film became a massive success for Universal and also for Lon Chaney Sr., putting him as the father of horror with his makeup skills. But a couple years later, we have our first reboot. Originally, it was supposed to be in the 30s, but unfortunately, due to cancellations, and this was during the time of war, like 3 years after when the United States entered World War II. Budget concerns, like that they use existing props. So now we have the reboot, and also Universal's first Oscar for a horror film, which is 1943's Phantom of the Opera. When it comes to classic horror, I think this one has to be iconic. But 1925 is the most iconic one, but 1943 in Technicolor, wow. It pops. Even for 1943. And you have good performances. You have Claude Rains, who plays Eric Clodin, Susanna Foster, Nelson Eddy as, well, here's a little gag here. You have 2 men fighting over who's going to be Christine's husband, literally. Not just Raoul, but you also have another one, a French detective, which is actually pretty funny. Okay, you have Nelson Eddy as Antoine Garon. You also have Edgar Barrier as Raoul Dubret, who is supposed to be the actor who's the love interest, while Nelson Eddy's character is the detective. More like a comedy, these two try to fight over Christine. And of course, you have Claude Rains as Eric Clodin, aka the Phantom. And oh boy, and you also have Susanna Foster as Christine Dewois. Remember, this is a color version, and man, the color technica here is beautiful. Even for 1943, the colors, including the choreography for the performance of each of the opera. And remember, they have to choose existing opera compositions because, World War II has been happening for a while. And this film is quite iconic. But it also does give one thing. How did the fan guys, the fans face? Claude Rains asked famed iconic makeup artist Jack Pierce to give him a scarred face, kind of like similar to the the victims from World War One, like the gas attacks, that this scarred face like one side from the mustard gas, kind of like that from the scars of World War One, and that's what he did. He did like more like a half the face, which now it's just like explains why Andrew Lloyd Webber got the iconic idea of his version of the Phantom, except he was born with a figure to one face instead of the full face. So yeah, you gotta thank the 1943 for that idea and the legendary Jack Pierce. And they used the same stage in color, which is pretty cool. And also I like this scene here where there's one scene how Eddie Claudin got the scar face. Easy. He was a violinist in the opera house due to having problems with his left hand. He was dismissed. He was also a composer. Tried to get his music published. It got stolen. He thought it was being stolen. Murdered the man in charge until his apprentice tosses nitric acid in his face, screaming in pain, and runs out. And glides down the sewers, washing his face with sewer water. Mysteriously, things started to disappear. Items, including a prop mask. One, if you recall, there's always one thing. Changing a management in the opera house, like different, it keeps changing who's in charge of the opera house. Mostly idiots, period. And the most iconic one of all is when, I forgot her name, this chick, you know which one. There's always, you have the woman, the original prima donna of the opera, but the found first Christine as the prima donna. Here is Bien Caroli, who actually she was sabotaged by the Phantom when he changed her. I don't know what you call this. Kind of like a type of spray that gives opera singers like the vocals to sing loud, a higher chord. He literally just like knocked her out, like some type of drug that knocked her out. Pissed off, she wants that Christine back in the choirs as an unknown, which of course didn't sit well for the Phantom. And after her in her dressing room, the maid went to put away her dress. She knows something in the closet, and peekaboo, the Phantom appears. And you recall, in a mask. Unlike the Lon Chaney one, where if you see Lon Chaney's mask from the Phantom of the Opera, it has like, the half, but there's a cloth under it. This one, Claude Rains' Phantom mask is more like eggshell blue, but you see his mouth. Also, you can see his sideburns, but he's more with a top hat, long cape. I like to see it right here, including the music when he appears. And she says, "Who are you?" "Christine Dubois will sing tomorrow night. Leave Paris. This is your last warning." And she's being a cocky bitch, like, "Who the think you are?" And then when she tries to take his mask off, he grabs her, and you hear her screaming. And everybody hears it. And you see him leaving. You see, I think it was Raoul chasing him. And it turns out he murdered her. Not just her, including her maid. And you have this iconic scene where Raoul chasing him up in the catwalks. And you see him peering through the ropes while Raoul's looking for him. He throws like a hook rope at him, knocking him over. He's hanging by one of the curtains while he just looks. And he vanishes. Damn. That was pretty cool. I kind of like that. And of course, you have the iconic scene where, oh yeah, I forgot about the chandelier. There have been many different versions of how the chandelier is done. The crash, like 1925, you have Eric. I think in the 1925 version, there's a talkie version where Eric mentioned about this prima donna that because he went for Christine singing, he says, "Behold, she is singing to bring down the chandelier." And the chandelier crashes. Here? Oh no. They're police disguise, but he managed to kill one of the police to take his disguise. Although he had the same mask, he just took his cloak. He switched cloaks. And he climbs up where the chain holds the chandelier and cuts it with a saw. As the singer sings, she sees the chain about the chandelier about to crash. She screams. Everyone looks up. Wham! Crashes, and everybody freaks out and runs. Chaos pursues. Damn. Even in color, that is scary right there. And we see Eric taking Christine with him. She thought he was a policeman until she realized who it is and taking him to the catacombs. This version of the catacombs looks different. It's like an underground lake, like eerie and spooky. And we take him to his lair, unlike the 925. It's like you see a piano, a table, and also his violin. Of course, Raul and the detective, remember, these two are like, fighting over who's going to marry Christine. It's like, and that's kind of like a perfect comedy duel between these two. And Christine's one love is the opera, so yeah. Of course, they decide to play Eric Clauden's music piece, which he hears from down below, and he starts playing on the piano, where Raul and Toel follow. But fortunately, due to the echo, most of the interior in the cavern started to collapse. Where we hear Christine singing it until we get the iconic scene where she rips off the mask, and we see they zoom into Claude Rains' face when you see that scarred face. I think it's scarred left face, and you see his face when Christine walks back, not like as in fear. And when the two barge in, his expression changed from surprised to mad, pissed off when he looks pissed off to see those two. And one of them, the detective pulls out a gun saying, "Don't move." And Claude Rain goes for a sword about to charge at them. But Raul managed to hit the gun with his elbow, causing a cave-in, which of course a piece of slab stone falls on top of Claudine, literally, as everything starts to collapse. They manage to rescue Christine, which of course she feels pity for him and sad for him. And we have this iconic scene where we see what's left. And there we have a shrine of a shrine for the Phantom, his mask and his violin. Originally, they were planning to do a sequel called a sequel to the Phantom of the Opera, because people were guessing, wait, what's that sound of rocks moving? They believe he survived the cave-in because you hear rocks moving. They believe he survived, but fortunately, they didn't do that. But it was called The Climax, starring Boris Karloff and Susanna Foster, but it's a different story, not related to this one here. And this film won an Academy Award for Best Technicolor, which, wow. Out of all of the horror, and they won this award in the 16th Annual Academy Awards ceremony. Oh, they didn't just won one. They won 2 categories in the Academy Awards. Best Art Direction. Okay, it had like 4 nominations: Art Direction, Cinematography, Music, and Sound Recording, and won 2, which is Cinematography for Technicolor and Art Direction, which, damn, that's a well-earned indeed. As a really canceled sequel, it was called The Climax. Fortunately, they couldn't do it, and it's kind of like a different one, but hey. And now to the final one, which is Hammer Horror. To tell you the truth, this has to be more like, remember, if you recall Hammer, they do the same thing, but they have their own way. I believe they're the only ones who show more blood right here. And of course, who else? When it comes to horror films, the Phantom of the Opera is quite good. If you recall, most of the Phantom of the Opera films are set, well, the last 2 were set in Paris. Hammer was set in London, remember, because it's British. But specifically, the last 2 are mostly around the 1890s. This is set in the 1900s. And This version of Phantom of the Opera has a different villain. Not the Phantom, but a different villain. More specifically, a lord who actually caused the whole thing to begin with. 1962's Hammer Universal's Phantom of the Opera is still iconic. Another one to Hammer Library, because remember, Hammer's trying going like they did with Dracula, they did with Frankenstein, they did with the Mummy. Hey, why not do with the Phantom of the Opera? So, we are the last cast of characters. We have a list of iconic characters. We have Herbert Lom as the Phantom, also a new name. Instead of Eric, he's called Professor Petrie. Heather Sears as Christine Charles. Edward DeSalza as Harry Hunter. And also our villain, Michael Gow. If you don't remember that name, you haven't seen the Batman films. He was Alfred. And if you remember the classic Doctor Who, he's the Celestial Toymaker. Unfortunately, half of that episodes were lost, except for the last one. But they did release an animated version with the original master recording of the Celestial Toymaker. So, yeah, go check it out if you actually bought the Blu-ray of Doctor Who, the Celestial Toymaker. Michael Gowan, that damn, he knocks it out. But here, he plays the villain of Lord Ambrose Darcy, let's just say a corrupted lord, which causes the whole fiasco of what actually happened to Professor Petrie, why he became the Phantom in the first place. And this film is quite, and remember called the Phantom being murderous? In this one, he has a dwarf that does the murdering for him, because to explain this specifically, this is set in London called the London Opera House, where a new opera by Lord Ambrose Darcy based on the story of Joan of Arc, the French patriot saint. Well, most of the original release of famous operas, this one's more focused on this particular opera. But it's also similar to what happened in 1943 with Claude Rains' character, where his music was stolen. Yeah, it was no mistake here. His music was actually stolen by Lord Ambrose. And he tried to destroy it because, one, he stole his life's work. And since Ambrose Darcy sees him as an unknown composer, he's like, I'll just take advantage and steal his music and put it as mine. Of course, when he sees the printed music but under Lord Ambrose's name, he confronts him, but fortunately, he breaks into the printers, tries to destroy it, even the original, the printing plate. Fortunately, it causes a fire. What he thought it was acid, what he thought was water, was actually nitric acid. When he's thrown in the fire, it splashed back in his face, burning his face horribly. Which, of course, you remember his iconic makeup. He has this full face mask, but except you can see only one eye. The reason why, his makeup is more gruesome. He literally has one half face, looks like it's been eaten by the acid. Literally, you can see rotten flesh on one side. A big gap where his other face, including his eye, was. That's why you can see he has only one eye, because that eye's been dead. And damn, I like the performance here, including the music as well. Also, the Herbert Lom playing this more kinder version of the Phantom, who actually cares about Christine becoming an iconic, and more is, well, technically, they treat it more as a student-teacher relationship than a romantic relationship. He wants to see Christine become this iconic star and helps her with her full potential. And also saved her from whatever Ambrose Darcy was about to do to her if Harry Hunter hadn't saved her from that date. Literally. I kind of like it. Also, we have this iconic intro where we see the empty aisles of the opera. We hear his music. We see the dwarfs in there. We see the Phantom play his organ, and we only get to see a close-up version, mostly to his left face. We see his eye. We see the title card right there. It's not until the dwarf kills the rat catcher where Christine's right there and we see the fat rat say, "Young woman, you must come with me." She's trying to say, "Who's this?" Until when he comes out of the shower, we see what his mask. All white hair, his skin was gray, an old tattered opera mask, like a full face mask. You can't see his mouth. You don't see little holes where his nose is, and one eye. The other one's like covered. Because if you see his makeup, yeah, that explains why. And I also like how Harry's trying to figure out who was the real composer of this opera piece. And Michael Gall pulling out as the villain, that's pretty good. And this ain't the only time Michael Gall appeared in a Hammer film. He also appeared in Dracula along with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, most respectively being Dracula. As this version, there's one scene I like. It's when Ambrose Darcy goes to his office like, "Out of my way." And he sees face to face to the fan and say, "Who are you?" I said, "Who are you?" "Good evening, Lord Ambrose. Take off that mask when you speak to me." "Do you hear me? Take that stupid mask off." As he ripped the mask off, he sees who it actually is, and you see that face. The face of terror, and he runs out of the opera, never to be seen again. He knows who it is, and he's like, "You fucked up, motherfucker. Now you see your creation fuck you up." And of course, because the Phantom's dying, because he looks like he's dying. He's like, you see his skin change. Okay, if you see his backstory, where you see before and after, yeah. And you have the scene where Christine's singing as Joan of Arc. We see a tear coming out of his eye, knowing that he's succeeded at making her star. Unfortunately, his dwarf, let's say, caused some trouble. And he's hanging on a chandelier, which the rope started to break. He knows it. He jumps out of his box, rips up his own mask, revealing his face, and everybody screams, pushes Christine out of the way, and the chandelier crashes on him, penetrating his heart, killing him instantly. Where the dwarf looks upon the man he saved, unfortunately, dies at his hands. Yes, this dwarf saved him when he was floating in the water after his face got burned, and he was escaping when the police was chasing him, and he jumps into the river. Wow. And we have this scene right there. We see the mask lay on the ground, and we have the credits rolling. Kind of almost like the one from 1943, but more different. Although it was received well, but it's not. It's kind of different than the 1925 and 1943. Overall, The Phantom of the Opera is one of the most iconic horror films. Fortunately, over the years, there have been many versions: television versions, stage versions, movie versions, even the famous Broadway version. But these three that Universal did, they remain iconic. And sometimes true to their word. And as for these three actors who portrayed the Phantom, well, you got Lon Chaney Sr., Claude Rains, Herbert Lom. They showed their own version of the Phantom. Lon Chaney as similar to the book version, Claude Rains as well, Herbert Lom more of a gentle Phantom. Overall, these three versions of the Phantom of the Opera are iconic. I kind of enjoyed them all. The music, the cinematography, the design of each one, including the makeup of their figures' faces. Man, you don't see those anymore. Like, each one more unique. Nowadays, most people relate to the Broadway version. Okay, we all seen the Broadway version. They think that's what the book is. Oh no, the book is more darker. And I have the novel. I read it. Wow. But overall, if you want to see which Phantom of the Opera you want to see, hey, I recommend these three. Yes, I seen other versions, like the one played by Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund, including one called The Phantom of the Paradise with I forgot his name. Shit, he played the villain in this one. He was also in Planet of the Apes in the fifth one, Battle for Planet of the Apes, as the orangutan that joins Caesar and McDonald to go to the Forbidden Zone. I didn't know that, but still, overall, out of all the Universal horror films, these three are like the only ones that are treated with respect and iconic to this day. And the 1925 still stands with 100%, almost 100 in Rotten Tomatoes, like 90. And you don't see those like anymore when it comes to classic horror. But yeah, let me know what you think on my thoughts on the Phantom of the Opera. More specifically, which one you like more, the 1925, the 1943, or the 1962? To me, I like them all three. I'd say each of the actors who portrayed the famous Mask Maestro have their own way of showing which side of him, either be Lon Chaney Sr., Claude Rains, or Herbert Lom. You cannot regret an iconic opera ghost. I hope everybody's enjoying a nice Halloween. And if you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe, hit the bell, like this video. And have a nice, happy Halloween, people. Enjoy yourself. Peace. And if you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe. And remember our goal is to hit 1 million subscribers, at least 500K. Until then, see you next time. Peace out.